Resuming debate, the honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. C'est toujours un plaisir d'être ici.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's always a pleasure to be here in the House. Before starting, I'd like to ask the House if I can get leave to split my time with another member. Thank you.
Est-ce que l'honorable député...
Does the honourable member have unanimous consent to split her time?
D'accord? D'accord.
So ordered. The honourable member. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Very much, Madam Speaker. It is certainly a pleasure to be back here in this House once again, representing the good people of Calgary-Midnapore, and even better to be here under our new leader, the member for Carleton. Madam Speaker, Nobel Prize winner and humanitarian Pearl Buck once wrote, "The test of a civilization is the way that it cares for its helpless members." Well, Madam Speaker, I would certainly say the subjects of this act today are not helpless, but they do need our help. I believe what Madam Buck was trying to say was how we treat the most vulnerable members of our society reflects the quality of it. So, Madam Speaker, let me take a moment and reflect how this government has treated the most vulnerable members of our society. And frankly, Madam Speaker, their track record is not very good. At best, it has been false, aspirational words, strong statements, of course, thoughts and prayers, with ultimately very little benefit to no one. Is that the intention of the legislation here today, of the government here today? A holding document? Something they really just want to put in the window, but don't intend to deliver on? It would be easy to argue that, considering that this legislation was the last piece of legislation that was placed before this House in the spring of 2019, right before we went into an election that summer, and this government knew that. It would be easy to think that, given that this was the last piece of legislation tabled before our summer recess. So it would be easy to assume that this is once again just thoughts and prayers, a hope for Canadians. But, Madam Speaker, I know the minister, and I know she wants the best for her community, and I believe her. So I don't think that these are aspirational words meant to simply inspire hope. But that's the best, Madam Speaker, of the legislation that we have seen from this government is false inspiration. But it's not the worst. What's been the worst, Madam Speaker? I will tell you. It has been legislation that divided Canadians. It has been legislation that left swaths of Canadians behind, to be absent from our society, to be ignored, and without recourse. So is this legislation, Madam Speaker, the worst legislation that we have seen from this government? No, it's not. Canadians have seen the worst, and they will not forget. So then, Madam Speaker, where does this legislation today find itself? This legislation, Madam Speaker, finds itself in the mushy middle. Why the mushy middle, Madam Speaker? It's because, Madam Speaker, this legislation wants to help, but falls short in convincing all Canadians that it actually will help. And we've seen this with legislation before. Legislation where details were omitted and left to the regulations. Things like budgets, how they are able to balance themselves. So there are many concerns, Madam Speaker, with this legislation. For example, the eligibility for the benefit. Many are concerned about whether individuals with invisible disabilities will be eligible. When you're walking down the street, Madam Speaker, and you meet someone, you don't know what they're dealing with. We don't know if they are dealing with an invisible disability like cancer or heart disease? We have no idea. And this legislation does not provide clarification as to if these invisible disabilities will be covered. The amount of the benefit that Canadians with disabilities would receive. It's not clear yet how the amount will be determined in conjunction with the existing provincial benefits. Because, of course, many disability supports are currently provided provincially, but there is no indication whether this benefit could be considered income and therefore disqualify individuals from receiving some provincial benefits. There needs to be assurances that there is no provincial disparity so that no matter where they live in Canada, they are equally supported. A Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, this Prime Minister has said. So let's show it. And we need to know how the benefit will impact if there are provincial changes to the disability support. Now, Madam Speaker, because we don't know how much the benefit will be, or how the benefit will be delivered, or who is eligible, we don't know the cost to deliver the benefit. Madam Speaker, with last week's announcement of the affordability bill, we are now at $56.5 billion in budget 2022. We don't know when or how the benefit would be delivered, Madam Speaker. Will the benefit be delivered monthly, weekly, at tax time? It's simply not clear or outlined within this legislation. Another major concern, Madam Speaker, if the benefit will be indexed to inflation. With rising inflation, Canadians are already suffering with a rate in June, an unbelievable rate of 4.1%. It is unbelievable that we would have to even consider the impacts of inflation on people with disabilities. The process to appeal for persons with disability that are denied the benefits. We know that disabilities are unique, and we know that there should be a fair and equitable appeal process for those who have been denied the benefit. When the persons with disabilities will start to receive the benefit, Madam Speaker, that is another concern that is outlined for us as a major concern with this legislation. As well, Madam Speaker, right now, the coming into force date will be determined by order of the Governor in Council. So even if this legislation passes and receives royal assent, Canadians with disabilities may not receive the benefit for some time, if they receive it at all. Madam Speaker, 1 in 5 Canadians lives with a disability. They need our support to live full lives and participate fully in society, including the workforce. Conservatives believe that all Canadians living with disabilities deserve timely access to these benefits and services and should not be penalized for going to work, as is too often the case today. They don't need more uncertainty, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I'd like to point out, my apologies, that the rate in June was 8.1% and not 4%, as I said previously. They don't need bureaucracy. They need our help. And if we want to be seen as a society that Pearl Buck would find worthy, then let's really help. So, Madam Speaker, in conclusion, this isn't the worst of the legislation that we have seen. This isn't the best of the legislation that we have seen, of aspirational ideas, a slogan of sunny days, but it isn't the worst, where this government consistently wedged, stigmatized, and divided.
Shame.
It is the mushy middle. But again, if we really want to have a society that Pearl Buck would judge as worthy, then let's have an act that actually helps people. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, the Prime Minister and Liberal members of the caucus have been very clear. We want an economy that works for all Canadians. And Bill 22 speaks to that. It ensures that we are going to be putting more disposable income in people with disabilities. The minister talked about how there's a disconnect in terms of the issue of poverty for a person with disability that's turning 65. The member opposite seems to want to mock the bill by challenging whether or not it'll take effect. The Conservative Party of Canada can recognize what the government has been talking about, enabling Canadians to be actively engaged in the economy, full participants. Let's fight poverty. Will the member be clear in her indication of support for the bill and its quick passage?
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Well, Madam Speaker, I thank the Government House Leader for his question. And I will say the economy is working for nobody. This is very clear right now as we have, as I mentioned, an inflation rate of 8.1% in June, budget in 2022 of $56.5 billion with the act that was recently announced. Canadians can't buy groceries right now. They can't fill up their vehicles with gas at this time. New families can't purchase homes. The economy is not working for anyone. So I would suggest the member not discuss the economy. And I think I made it clear within my my speech that we will be supporting the bill, but it's not super inspirational. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions et commentaires. L'honorable.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières, Madam Speaker. Thank you. I'm back in the House like you. I'm very happy to see you again. We're talking about people who are disabled, living with a disability. Many expressions are used, but there is something that is of concern to me. Guillaume Parent, head of the Centre for Disability Expertise, he said recently that there are fewer people in Quebec who state that they are disabled because the word handicap doesn't have the same definition as the word disability in English. So are both terms going to be better defined so that people can understand what is meant by handicap or disability? Thank you.
Midnapore.
And merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much to my colleague for the question. I believe that even if we have use of one or the other word, the intentions are the same. That must also mean that legislation has to be drafted equally in both languages. So even if one word or the other is used, that which is not in the legislation should be added to at least regulation. The same issue exists with this bill, even if you use one word or the other. The bill is still problematic.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And the disability community has been clear. They need help now. How did we get here? Well, it's consecutive Liberal and Conservative governments who have failed the disability community. And after 7 years in power, this Liberal government has dragged their feet and now tabled a bill that is empty on the critical pieces, the critical details of a bill. Who is eligible? When will people get the benefit? How much will the benefit be? Can the member comment on how after 7 years a government could table something without details?
Answer from the member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I think that's very rich to point to Conservative Liberal governments when they are, in fact, in a coalition with the Liberal. She should have done a better job of negotiating if she wanted to see that within the bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.